Good morning. It's the appointed time. We have a quorum. This is the Bills Committee on Registration of Same-Sex Partnerships Bill. This is the second meeting. I call the meeting to order. We will first invite representatives of the administration to come to join us.
On the
23rd of July, we have agreed that there will be an invitation sent to the public for submission. The Secretariat has already posted a notice on the website to invite submissions from the public. The deadline is 5 o'clock on the 29th of July, which is a Tuesday. The Secretariat has already circulated the 55 submissions received as at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. In the last meeting, we have already gone through policy matters. In this meeting, we will start with a clause-by-clause scrutiny. First of all, I'd like to draw members' attention to a letter sent by the legal advisor to the administration dated the 22nd of July on legal and drafting matters. It is paper number CB bracket 21497 of 2025 bracket 02. The legal advisor had sought clarifications in paragraph 1 and 2 of the correspondence. We'll now hear an oral reply from the Secretary. In the Shamsi Kit case, the CFA made an order that the government has a positive obligation to establish an alternative framework for legal recognition of same-sex partnerships. There should be provisions for appropriate rights and obligations attendant on such recognition so that the privacy of such partnerships can be protected. The CSFA, when making the order in relation to the alternative framework, there is actually flexibility in the framework. That includes the core rights to be set out in order to meet the fundamental needs of same-sex partnerships in order to give them protection. The positive obligation under BOR 14, while we establish an alternative framework for legal recognition, we have taken into account a basket of factors. That includes a respect for the legal principle of the CFA, Hong Kong situation, culture, as well as various matters. Having carefully considered all these factors, we consider that in relation to medical matters, healthcare matters, funeral matters, there should be rights and obligations provided for. We will legislate to implement our proposal. In addition, we also put in place administrative measures to implement them. All these are to meet the basic needs of couples under same-sex partnership. We have introduced a bill. We want to win the support of the LegCo. If the bill is passed, same-sex partnership couples will enjoy these core rights as well as the various rights under different enactments. We have taken into account the rights of couples in same-sex partnership. We have fulfilled the positive obligation under Article 14 of the Bill of Rights. The bill is a proposal to set down a framework for legal recognition of such partnerships. Under the Basic Law, the legislature has the power to enact legislation. We have the obligation to complete the work before the 27th of October. If need be, we will consult the DOJ to map out the way forward. In relation to paragraph 2, when formulating the alternative framework, we have drawn reference from the practice in different jurisdictions, including the form of legal recognition, and revocation of the recognition, as well as the various rights and obligations. These obligations have taken into account their laws, their values, the conventions, and as well as their cultures when formulating their own law. Their approach may not be fully applicable in Hong Kong. We have taken into account our own situation. We provide an alternative framework offering legal recognition for couples in a stable relationship. The legal recognition is based on a partnership that is recognized and committed. Using partnership recognized or registered overseas is a verifiable form. There may be different forms of legal recognition. When we formulate our alternative framework, we have to take into account Hong Kong's actual situation, family, as well as traditional values, the overall interest of our community, as well as public expectation when we tailor-made the framework. Thank you. If the legal advisor wants certain matters to be clarified, then we will ask the administration to provide a reply when we reach that point. We will now start with the Chinese version of the bill. Members, if you have any views in relation to the English text, do raise them. We'll ask the administration to take us through the bill using the blue bill. I ask the legal advisor to draw members' attention to matters that will warrant further discussion. Members, if you have questions on a certain clause, press the request to speak button when we reach that clause. When we scrutinize Schedule 3, that is, in relation to the various enactments, please refer to the marked up copy, that is, CB bracket 2 1497 of 2025 bracket 01. We need further reply or follow-up. Let the administration know. The administration will provide a written reply. Ms. Nixie Lam. Do I have to wait till clause by clause? So you're not going to ask any questions in relation to the policies. We will ask the administration to start the clause by clause. If you want to ask certain questions in relation to a particular clause, then you press the button. We will start the clause by clause now. Please turn to C3772 in a Chinese version. C3773 in English version. A bill to is 3772 for Chinese, 3773 for English. A bill to establish a regime for the registration of same-sex partnerships and provide for related matters and to make related amendments for certain enactments enacted by the Legislative Council. Part 1, Preliminary. 1. Short title and commencement. 1. This ordinance may be cited as the registration of same-sex partnerships ordinance. 2. This ordinance comes into operation on a date to be appointed by the Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs by notice published in the Gazette. I see that some members have indicated they would like to ask questions. First, Ms. Nixie Lam. I see that under Part 1(1)(2) is about the commencement. Why is it that it is for the Secretary to appoint a date by notice published in the Gazette? Why is it not the case that it will come into operation on the date when the enactment is published in Gazette? There is a deadline imposed by the court, which is the 27th of October. Is that our schedule? If we follow the normal procedure, the deadline is a different time. So it's a procedural question. Permanent Secretary. I thank the member for the question. We are working on full steam to support the work of the Bills Committee. Our goal is to complete the legislative work before the 27th of October. When it comes to commencement, we have to first do some work. That is to set up the registration office, to appoint a registrar, to provide for various matters, and training of staff members. We will have to wait till we complete all the work before we have the Secretary appoint a date for the ordinance to come into operation. This is not unique to this bill. There are other bills that come into operation sometime after the passage of the bill. But of course, we will try to have the ordinance commence as soon as possible. Mr. Peter Shiu. According to the Legislative Council brief, it says that the provision of an alternative framework is for registration of partnership outside Hong Kong. In the short title, it just says same-sex partnership. Why is it that the word outside Hong Kong is not included? The main theme is to put in place a legal recognition regime for same-sex partnership. We use this name because we have drawn reference from the judgment of the Sham Chi Kit judgment. The judgment says that an alternative framework is to be established to recognize same-sex partnership. That's why we have used such words. Mr. Shiu asked why we did not use the word registered outside Hong Kong. Well, in under interpretation 2 and clause 6, it says that one of the requirements, according to the judgment, is that we grant legal recognition to a relationship that has been committed and stable. If the relationship has been recognized and registered under the laws of an overseas jurisdiction, it will be an objective and verifiable basis for our recognition. The long title uses the words in the judgment. Registering partnership, a same-sex partnership is one of the conditions.
簡叫做
This bill is called the Registration of Same-Sex Partnerships Bill. There are views that there is difference between same-sex partnerships and same-sex marriages. How can you make sure that you can ensure that people can tell the distinction between the two through your wording? We don't want to give people the impression that we are recognizing same-sex marriages. If you use terms that are too similar to each other, there might be confusion. So how can you ensure that this can be distinguished between same-sex partnerships as well as traditional marriages? Under Article 14 of the Hong Kong Bill of Rights, we have to fulfill the positive obligation by establishing this alternative framework so that same-sex partnerships can be legally recognized. On this legal basis, under the judgment, we are proposing this framework. And this is mainly to recognize same-sex partnerships. Regardless of how the same-sex partnerships are registered overseas, under this bill, we recognize the relationships as same-sex partnerships. And this is different from our monogamous and heterosexual marriage system, which has been upheld in Hong Kong over the years. According to the CFA judgment in Jimmy Sham's case, this is only confined to heterosexual marriage, that is the rights under the Basic Law. We understand that members of the public have their concerns. Through education and publicity, as well as through our guidelines, we will clearly explain this. Ms. Nixie Lam. I have a similar question with the chairman. A number of friends mentioned to me that when they talk about this bill, they see it as a recognition of same-sex marriages. But I had to correct them. So I think the wording used here can be confusing. As mentioned by other members, are there other ways to name this bill? As said by a number of members, we don't want to use wordings that is close to the idea of same-sex marriages or quasi-marriage. So can we think about the naming of the bill? As mentioned, when we designed this mechanism, we drew reference from the judgment made by the CFA, and the similar wording is adopted in the judgment. So I have to stress again that this proposed framework is mainly to recognize same-sex partnerships. This is absolutely not equivalent to recognizing same-sex marriages. Through education, publicity, and guidelines, we will make a clear statement. Mrs. Regina Ip, I don't think there are any problems with using the word partnership, because if you are married to someone, then your partner will be called a spouse. In the Western world, the term was first called spouse, then partner, then significant others, which means you're not married to that person. I know a tycoon also has a right partner, and he calls his wife a right partner. So it's quite well understood in the Western world that partnerships imply a relationship that is not a marriage. So there is no way that this will generate confusion. We have to, however, explain to members of the public that this is not equivalent to marriages. Like Mrs. Ip said, legally speaking, this will not give rise to confusion. It's just that it may give people the wrong idea. Yes, we agree with Mrs. Ip. We took into consideration members' concerns as well when we decided on the naming of the bill. We have to tread cautiously. We cannot confuse people by giving people the impression that we are recognizing same-sex marriages. I think the current naming is clear. Mr. Edmund Wong, I think we all have different views on the name of the bill. We have to let the public understand the purpose of this bill and the legislative exercise. I believe the majority of people in Hong Kong would be able to understand this. The wording same-sex partnerships come from the judgment of the CFA, and the CFA requested the government to set up this system. While we follow the order to set up the system, we may not adopt the same wording in the judgment. I want to know if there are other options in terms of the naming. Is the word partner or partnership used in other legislations? This term, such as prohibitees, are used in other legislations as well. So I want to know if the word partner or partnership are cited or used in other legislations. Who will take the question? Please switch on the mic for Senior Government Counsel, Mr. Chen. We rarely use the word partnership to describe a relationship between two people in our laws. If two people work together to form a business, we describe them as partners. So this is a new concept in our law, the term partnership. And this also differs from other laws in terms of how they describe interpersonal relationships. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Some friends of mine have a big question concerning this bill. This bill is about same-sex partnerships, but how do these same-sex partnerships come from? Well, they come from same-sex marriages. So you can't say you do not recognize same-sex marriages but same-sex partnerships, because how are these same-sex partnerships generated or originated? They got married elsewhere, and you're allowing them now under the bill to obtain registration. So there is a legal implication to this term same-sex partnership. The government stresses time again that we recognize only the monogamous and heterosexual marriage system under the Basic Law. But for those who get married and those who are homosexual and they get married elsewhere, you will allow them to obtain registration under the bill. So how can you say that you are not recognizing same-sex marriages or So let's see if the administration can offer a better explanation. Administration. I thank Dr. Low for the questions and the comment. According to the judgment made by the CFA, we do have the obligation to establish an alternative framework. Regardless of how the same-sex partnerships were formed elsewhere, under this bill, the people concerned will be recognized as having same-sex partnerships, and this thus is not equivalent to recognizing same-sex marriages. We can all understand simple math. It's like under the bill there is a subset of recognizing same-sex marriages. You are recognizing same-sex marriages. Is my understanding correct? Let me say a few words. There are certain conditions to be fulfilled under this framework. People may have their same-sex partnership registered outside Hong Kong, and this can be one of the conditions for the registration of same-sex partnerships in Hong Kong under the bill. There are different forms of same-sex partnerships. There might be people who are homosexuals and they get married elsewhere. There are also same-sex partners. So the major point is not that we recognize same-sex marriages. We consider whether homosexual partners are committed to their relationships and whether their relationships are stable before we grant them the registration. And at the end of the day, even if we grant the registration, we only recognize same-sex partnerships. So there's a difference between same-sex partnerships and same-sex marriages. So even if they get the registration, it's not that we are recognizing same-sex marriages. So for homosexual partners, even if they get married elsewhere and they get the registration here, it doesn't mean we are recognizing same-sex marriages. So the two are totally different. Mrs. Regina Ip. Chairman, I suggest that you time us when we speak. What Dr. Loh Wai Kwok said is about the policy, and what Ms. Nixie Lam said is about the wording. She asked whether the term partnership would give people the impression that it is like a marriage. If you look at CAB 181, the marriage ordinance, the term male party and female party are mentioned, and you have to take oath when you get married. So the term partners is different from marriage. A real marriage is between female party and male party. Partners are not the same as marriages. So we don't have to worry that by using the word partner, it is equivalent to marriage. So please look at CAP 181 of our law, the marriage ordinance. I'll give each member 3 minutes, including questions and answers for each member.
葉太都表達過意見。
We'll now hear from Mr. Tang Fei. I don't know whether my question is about policy or not. So under this bill, there is one form which is a civil union. I agree that civil union is not equivalent to a marriage. It's a quasi-marriage. It's not an equivalent to a marriage. There is a mechanism in place in the bill. Well, say for example, there is a partnership that is registered. It's a marriage, not just a civil union, an actual marriage. And then they broke up, and then they break up. But there is no mechanism to recognize this situation. If there is a dispute, what will happen? Because the marriage has already been dissolved overseas. This blue bill is about the rights and obligations, so the party can still claim that they have rights under the bill. In the bill, there is no mechanism to cancel or revoke the registration. Is that right? In the bill, there are provisions that if the same-sex relationship terminates overseas, in Hong Kong there will be a revocation of the recognition. They have the obligation and the duty to notify us. So they have the duty to notify us of the termination. Yes. Miss Nixie Lam, you have pressed the button. Miss Lam? A member talked about the word parties. Well, I was using the Chinese text. The legal advisor said that in our laws, the word partnership is usually used to refer to a partnership in business. Let's turn to 3791, 1B. It uses the word parties. A member said that in a marriage, the parties is used to refer to the parties involved. Is under clause 12(1)(b). The parties both wish to revoke the registration, so the word parties is used. May we hear from the legal advisor for some clarification? Well, I was using the Chinese text in the blue bill, and the member talked about the English term. I think for the majority of people in Hong Kong, they think and use Chinese. And if you extend it to the English term, the understanding of the term, the interpretation of the term, the definition of the legal status of the word, I think we need to have an in-depth discussion. We need to have a more detailed explanation. Who is to take the question? I thank the member for the question. Just now, Mrs. Yip referred to the marriage ordinance. When the parties take oath, the words male and female parties are used. That is where you fill in your name. It's just about the male party and female party before they become married. In the law, we use spouse, husband, wife. And these words are not used in the blue bill. Party is a neutral word referring to the personalities involved. I think we're clear about this point. Let's continue with the clause by clause. Mr. Lau. We'll now go to clause 2, interpretation 1. In this ordinance, if you find the important terms, I would like to draw your attention to some of them. The same-sex partnership registration the same-sex partnership registration certificate, same-sex partnership revocation of registration certificate, same-sex partnership registered outside Hong Kong, and same-sex partnership terminated outside Hong Kong. Well, when the registry is set up, there will be a registrar. An assistant will be there to support the work of the registrar. When we go to 3776, under 3, if it is dissolved validly, and if it is becomes invalid, it means that the partnership comes to an end. Under clause 4, it says that whether it's a registration of a marriage or of a civil partnership or a civil union, it doesn't matter whether it is conducted in person or by remote means. The effect is that during the course of the registration of a partnership overseas, the person may attend in person or by remote means, because in certain jurisdictions that's allowed. 4b, it says that it does not matter whether a same-sex partnership registered outside Hong Kong is registered before the date on which this ordinance comes into operation or on or after that date. That means when the ordinance comes into operation, the partnership registered outside is registered before or after the ordinance comes into operation, it does not matter. That's in relation to clause 2. We'll see if members have any questions. I think our legal advisor has asked questions in this regard. What is the question? Question 4 is in relation to the definition. Same-sex partnership registered outside Hong Kong. We asked about the definition. It refers to a marriage or a civil partnership or a civil union or a relationship that is substantially the same as a civil partnership or civil union registered between two persons of the same sex under the law of a place outside Hong Kong. The administration said that in other jurisdictions, there are different forms of relationship accepted by these jurisdictions. There is this phrase, a relationship that is substantially the same. What factors is to be considered to recognize it as a relationship that is substantially the same? Should it be provided expressly in the bill? I thank the legal advisor for the question. In the judgment of the CFA, it says that in many jurisdictions, there are many different forms of partnership that is recognized. The most common ones are civil partnership or civil union. In different jurisdictions, there may be differences between a civil partnership and a civil union, depending on the nomenclature of the of this form in the jurisdiction as well as their culture. That's why we have used this phrase, relationship that is substantially the same as a civil partnership or a civil union. The person in charge of the registration will consider the case based on the documents and information received. If there is a clear term stated, if we have sufficient information and if we get verification from the jurisdiction, then it's quite clear-cut. In cases when it's not as clear-cut, then we will consider whether the relationship is of a nature that is substantially the same. We consider the legal basis, the rights and obligations attendant to such a relationship. Whether there are arrangements for the relationship to be dissolved or terminated, as well as relevant matters. In different jurisdictions, and there are different operations. They are not entirely the same. When it comes to the forming of a relationship or the recognition, it evolves with the times. So we can't possibly come up with an exhaustive list. But we will explain to the public through a dedicated website. We will provide sufficient information. There are 4 members waiting to ask questions. Mr. So Chung-wing. I want to ask about registrar. Registrar says that there may be when the relationship becomes invalid or when it's effectually dissolved under the law of any place. It says that the same-sex partnership registered outside Hong Kong is terminated when that happens. So when that happens, and when the parties have already registered their partnership, the fact that the partnership registered outside is terminated, do they have to take the initiative to revoke the registration? When they apply to revoke the registration, do you require both parties to be present? And if the relationship has broken down to the extent that they are not talking to one another, what will happen? What if one of the parties continue to use the registration to enjoy the rights provided for in the bill? What will happen? I think when it comes to registration, that is for the next part. Perhaps you wait. But I'm asking this question under interpretation. That is subclause 3. I think that you can wait for the detailed explanation in the next part. We'll first hear from the Permanent Secretary. I will defer to Ms. Wong. Mr. So has asked 4 questions. The first one is in relation to the termination of a partnership registered outside Hong Kong. Does it mean that the registration in Hong Kong will be revoked? Well, if a partnership registered outside Hong Kong is terminated, then the one in Hong Kong will be revoked. The party or both parties may take the initiative to apply for a revocation at the registry. When there is confirmation that the partnership registered outside Hong Kong is dissolved or is invalid, then the registration will be revoked. There is a situation under which when the registrar is aware that the partnership is terminated, then under one of the clauses, 14, the registrar has the power to revoke the registration. The other question from Mr. So is whether both parties have to be present to apply for the revocation. The parties may not be talking to one another. Under clause 13, it says that it can be either parties or both parties. If it's one party applying for a revocation, there are provisions stating that the registrar has the duty to inform both parties that the registration has been revoked. And in a reasonable manner, the revocation certificate will be served to the parties. The third question. If the parties do not end the relationship cordially, then how do they inform the registrar? The parties to the registration have the duty to notify the registrar when the partnership is terminated, that is under clause 11. Within 6 months after they become aware that the partnership registered outside is terminated, they have to inform the registrar. Failure to do so attracts criminal liabilities.
Sorry, what is the fourth question? Dr. So, please repeat the question. Well, if only one party is required to complete the procedure, then I think there's no need for me to ask the fourth question. This is because if the partnership is terminated, the other party will not be able to enjoy the rights conferred upon under the bill. Should I still ask this question, Chairman? Well, I think you have overrun. When we come to the part about registration, you may ask this question. Mr. Holden Chow, please. Thank you. My position is that I am against this registration system. I have a question concerning the definition. Please look at the registration of same-sex partnership. It covers civil partnership or civil union formed outside Hong Kong. Bracket 4A says, it does not matter whether the registration of a marriage or of a civil partnership or civil union is conducted in person or by remote means. So it doesn't matter whether the partnership is contracted in person or through online means. So I have a very strong opinion here. You are telling the public that you will be recognized if you get married overseas. You are even allow them to get married remotely, and they will still be recognized under the bill. I understand the administration has said time and again that it doesn't mean we are recognizing same-sex marriages. But if you look at the matter objectively, members of the public will get the perception that civil partnership or civil union or even same-sex marriages could be contracted remotely by overseas authorities, and then they will still get the registration here. And this will twist a lot of people's perception about marriage. I think this is an objective consequence. Second question. Say a same-sex couple gets married overseas and then they want to break up. According to the bill, they will have to get divorced and then have the registration revoked. Well, it's easy for us to discuss this matter verbally now, but matters involving marriages or relationships can involve a lot of disputes and conflicts. So I think to take care of the needs of same-sex partners, you have to do it through administrative measures. Now, according to the bill, you allow people to get married overseas and then get registration here. This will give rise to many disputes. By introducing this registration system, we are going to give rise to endless legal disputes. We do not want too many litigations in Hong Kong, so this is my opinion of this part of the bill. This is a comment from Mr. Holden Chow. Does the administration want to supplement on any points made? Yes, Secretary. Just now, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok raised his concern about whether we are recognizing same-sex marriages by introducing this bill. I already said that the two are not comparable to each other. We are going to recognize civil partnership or civil union formed overseas. And we are formulating this registration system. Even with this arrangement, it doesn't mean that we are recognizing same-sex marriages. We have made it very clear already. In Hong Kong, we are only going to recognize same-sex partnerships. The registration system as well as the rights and obligations attendant on such recognition provided for under the bill, they are very different from recognition of same-sex marriages. We understand members' concerns. We will make sure that we will explain it to the public. As to whether this has to be done through legal means, I again have said it many times that this is necessary. This is to protect the rights of same-sex partners. So we have already responded to the concerns made by Mr. Holden Chow. Next, Dr. Eric Yim. Currently, there are over 30 countries that recognize same-sex partnerships. Can you provide a list of these countries in the bill? If there are more such countries in future, will you update the list from time to time? However, it does not necessarily mean that there will be more countries recognizing same-sex partnerships. After the change of government, the relevant arrangement may be overturned. So say a government ceases to recognize same-sex partnerships, and the partners who formed their partnerships in those countries, will the registrations obtained in Hong Kong be automatically revoked? Yes, administration. Member mentioned about other jurisdictions that already recognize same-sex partnerships. If this bill is passed, we will implement this registration system. We will, on our dedicated website, include the relevant information. As mentioned earlier, different jurisdictions may continue to develop their own systems. There might be changes to their system. So it's not ideal if we include a list under the bill, but if the bill is passed, we will include the relevant information on our dedicated website. For part 2 of the question, I'll defer it to Ms. Wong. Thank you. To give a simple answer, if there is information that shows or confirms that a same-sex partnership is revoked or terminated in other jurisdiction, we will update the relevant information and we will not recognize the system established in other places. So does that mean the registration obtained by same-sex partners here will be automatically revoked? I think we'll have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Next, Mr. Peter Xu. I want to follow up on the question raised by Mr. Holden Chow. C3776 of the Chinese version, bracket 4A. It says, it does not matter whether the registration of a marriage is conducted in person or by remote means. The registration will be recognized here. There are people who have strong opinions about same-sex marriages. So I guess the reason of having this provision is that we have to emphasize to people that the registration is not originally obtained here. The partnership is not formed here. If we accept a partnership to be formed by remote means, say there is a couple who goes to take pictures outside the marriage registry, and then the next day the couple obtain registration here. Well, that will not be very ideal. So will you still accept partnership to be formed by remote means? Administration. We want to facilitate applicants. For various reasons, it may not be easy for same-sex partners to form a partnership outside Hong Kong. We don't have to be too worried about the perception we give to the public. Even if a partnership is conducted by remote means, it is still done under the laws of other places. It doesn't mean the marriage or partnership is conducted in Hong Kong. I think the main point is that the partnership will have to be formed according to the laws of other jurisdictions. If that's the case, then we consider it's a stable relationship and we will grant registration. If, according to the law of other jurisdictions, the marriage or partnership can be conducted by remote means or through online means, then we will not disregard that. So if according to the laws of other places this can be done online, then that would be accepted.
邵議
My concern is just about perception. Mr. Xiu has expressed his concerns about perception. Mr. So Chang-wing. It's just an extension of my previous question. It is still within the part of interpretation. The administration explained that only one party is required for application of revocation. For relationships registered outside Hong Kong, the thing is that the Hong Kong side may not know everything. The registrar has to rely on the information supplied by the parties. If the parties choose not to revoke the registration and continue to enjoy the rights, they can do that without the registrar knowing. The administration said that it is a contravention of the law. Yes, that may be the case. If the presence of one party is required to apply for revocation, and that two parties are on bad terms, one party terminates the relationship. But will it be unfair to the other party who hasn't taken any action? Ms. Wong, I will answer the two questions briefly. The first question is when one person applies for a revocation. However, there is inequality. There is an imbalance of information. The registrar may not know. Well, the member does not have to worry because doing so is against the law. Also, we have already expressly provided that if the overseas relationship is terminated, the recognition in Hong Kong will become null or invalid after 6 months from the termination of the overseas partnership. So regardless of whether there is an active application made, when it is revoked, we will update the information. The second question is that if there is a relationship overseas, the parties in Hong Kong can still apply for a revocation even though there is a valid relationship registered overseas. Ms. Yip. Well, I think by remote means that in some cases, say during the epidemic, the registration could not be done overseas in person. It's just like we had remote meetings in Hong Kong in LegCo. There may be cases when someone is seriously ill and is unable to physically attend the registration. Secretary, I think it is down to the individual jurisdictions. If they allow it to be done remote means, then we accept it. So if their laws accept the registration done by remote means, you accept it, yes. Clauses 3 and 4 are rather short. Perhaps they can be dealt with together. Clause 3. Meaning of same-sex partnership registration and registered same-sex partnership. 1. In this ordinance or any other ordinance, same-sex partnership registration means a registration under Section 5. Now, C3778 for Chinese. For the purposes of this ordinance or any other ordinance, a person is registered same-sex partner of another person if there is a valid same-sex partnership registration for the same-sex partnership of those two persons. C3781 in English. Part 2, Registrar. 4. Appointment of registrar, etc. 1. There is to be a registrar same-sex partnerships who is a public officer appointed or authorized by name or office by the Secretary as the Secretary considers appropriate. 2. The registrar same-sex partnerships mentioned in subsection 1 may appoint or authorize by name or office any public officer to be a deputy registrar same-sex partnerships as the registrar same-sex partnership considers appropriate. 3. The Secretary may set up an office of the registrar as required for the purposes of this ordinance and may appoint an officer to be known by a post title that the Secretary decides to have charge of each such office. Clause 3 explains the meaning of same-sex partnership registration and a registered same-sex partner. That means they are recognized under the law. That includes parts 1 to 6 in Schedule 3, those provisions. 4 is in relation to the appointment of a registrar and a deputy registrar. The Secretary may appoint a public officer as a registrar and may set up an office of the registrar. Mr. Dennis Leung. I asked for some, Mr. Kenneth Leung. I asked for some clarification. Here it talks about setting up of an office of the registrar. So the public officer to be appointed, is it going to be of a certain rank? Will this post, the registrar, be under the Secretary? The post will be under the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau. The registrar is the person in charge of the registry. It has to be someone who has the experience and ability to run the registry. The plan is to have someone of a directorate post to take this position. Mr. Edmund Wong, I want to ask about 3(2). Registered under the laws of a place outside Hong Kong. But the administration talked about the use of an administrative means if the law is not passed. There may be some jurisdictions making use of an administrative means instead of legislation to handle these relationships. So if there is a jurisdiction that uses administrative means to handle such relationships, is it the case that the Hong Kong SAR will not accept the relationship? We established the alternative framework under the requirement of the CFA. We have to do it by way of legislation. We're aware that in some overseas jurisdiction, administrative means is used for the recognition. There may be uncertainties. If it is done by administrative means, then it is subject to changes very easily. We think there is a need for certainty and stability. That's why we consider relationships formed through the laws of the place. So if it is not done by way of legal means, we will not recognize such relationship. Mr. Su Chong-wing, I have 2 questions. 3. Meaning of same-sex partnership. Before that, there is 2. Interpretation. Why is this one not subsumed under clause 2? Why do you have to have a separate clause to explain the meaning? Why not put them under 2? Why is there a need to carve it out? It seems that you have given it some emphasis. Under registrar, you talk about the setting up of an office. How many offices are there going to be? P.S. I'll answer the second question first. For the first one, I'll defer to the DOJ. If the bill is passed, we will, as soon as possible, set up the registry. We don't yet know how many people will use the service, so we will first set up one office. We will keep in view the situation before we consider setting up more offices. Now I defer to the DOJ, Senior Government Counsel. To reply to the member's first question, why there is a need to carve out clause 3. Well, clause 2 is in relation to the definition of individual terms. 3 is in relation to registration, the meaning of registration of registered partner. Under 3.1, it says that in this ordinance or any other ordinance. I think it will be clearer if we separate it this way. Mrs. Regina Ip. I'm glad to hear from the Secretary that the registry will be under the CMAB. Ms. Nick Sealam and some other members are concerned that this registration regime is equal to marriage, so it should not be under the Immigration Department. Under the Immigration Department, there is the marriage registrant. So there is a differentiation. I asked you to save money and not to appoint an officer of Directorate Grade to be the registrar. I see that in some government departments or bureaus there are lots of directorate posts created. In this case, I think you can streamline the process and not use a directorate grade officer. And you need to differentiate this registry from the marriage registration office under the Immigration Department. Secretary, when we consider the establishment of the registry and relevant arrangements, we have actually considered the point raised by Mrs. Yip. The Immigration Department has vast experience in this matter. We, at one point, consider whether to use the Immigration Department. However, just like what Mrs. Yip said, we want to make sure that it is separated from the Immigration Department for perception reasons. So that's why it will not going to be under the Immigration Department. In relation to the person, the rank of the person to be appointed, we will consider prudent use of public resources.
話
Now it's my turn. The registrar will be appointed by the secretary, but the assistant will not be appointed by the secretary. I mean, the deputy registrar will not be appointed by the secretary. What is the consideration behind? Also, we want to differentiate same-sex partnership from traditional marriages. We may not necessarily need an official of a very high ranking to handle the matter. So I hope that by the rank of the registrar will be able to tell the public that there will be a distinction between same-sex partnerships and traditional marriages. I hope that you can ease people's concerns in this regard. The registrar will definitely be appointed by the secretary because he will be the person in charge. As for the deputy registrar, he will handle the day-to-day operation of the registry, and it will be the registrar who decides on who should be the deputy registrar, and we find this arrangement appropriate. I suggest that we look at clauses 5 and 6 together. Deputy Secretary, please. Please turn to C3783 of the English version. Part 3. Regime for registration of same-sex partnerships. Division 1. Registration of same-sex partnerships. Subdivision 1. Registration of same-sex partnerships on application. Clause 5. Registration of same-sex partnership by registrar on application. Subject to the other provisions of this subdivision, the registrar may, on application made by any two persons, register the same-sex partnership of those two persons so that the same-sex partnership is recognized in law. The main point of this provision is that upon successful application by the partners, the same-sex partnership will be recognized in law. Clause 6. Conditions for registration. A same-sex partnership registration is valid only if all the following conditions were met when the same-sex partnership registration application was made. A. That the parties are of the same sex. B. That the parties have both reached 18 years of age. C. That the parties are each or the party is a resident of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region under Article 24 of the Basic Law. D. That there is a valid same-sex partnership registered outside Hong Kong between the parties. E. That each of the parties does not have a valid marriage or civil partnership or civil union or relationship that is substantially the same as a civil partnership or civil union registered under the law of any place with a third party, whether of the opposite sex or same sex, and 2. Does not have a registered same-sex partner. F. That there is not between the parties any specified relationship under Schedule 2. That is, if you need legal recognition, you will have to see whether you meet the 6 conditions here. That's all from me. Thank you. 4 members have asked to speak. Mr. Kenneth Leung, please. 6A mentions that one of the conditions is that the parties are of the same sex. Say we have the registration system in place and one of the parties change his or her sex. Does that mean the registration obtained will be automatically revoked? Administration. There are such situations in other jurisdictions. That is, one party may have changed his or her sex, and that leads to a change in the relationship or partnership as well. we are still handling some of the judicial review cases concerning people's sexes and gender. We have to tread carefully. We have to look at the future rulings of these JR cases in order to make a decision. Dr. So Chuan-Wing, I want to ask about Clause 5. It's about registration of same-sex partnership by registrar on application. The last line here. So that the same-sex partnership is recognized in law. I think this part is not necessary. The previous lines already state that the same-sex partnership will be recognized in law. Why do you have to emphasize that the same-sex partnership is recognized in law? Members of the Legislative Council as well as some members of the public are concerned that with the registration system we are legally recognizing same-sex marriages. The SAR government has from time to time stressed that this is not equivalent to same-sex marriages, but we don't want to give people the wrong perception that we are recognizing same-sex marriages. So why do you have to stress here that the same-sex partnership is recognized in law? Administration. Now the last part of Clause 5 here is just to confirm that upon registration the same-sex partnership is recognized in law, and this is to fulfill the positive obligation stated in the ruling of the CFA. I want to see if the Department of Justice has anything to add about the drafting here. DOJ? Well, I don't have anything specific to add. This is about the purpose of registration. As the administration said, this is just to state that the same-sex partnership will be recognized. Dr. Eric Yim. The ruling is to protect the rights of same-sex partners. This can be done through various means, including administrative measures. The government is now introducing the idea of registration. And this may elevate the status of same-sex partnership to marriage. After obtaining registration, what will a married couple or a couple do? They will take wedding pictures. They will post the pictures to Facebook or other social media. And this will give people the perception that same-sex partners have got married. This is like de facto marriage. And the certificate of the same-sex partners received overseas will be accepted. Well, how will you fulfill the obligation and at the same time minimize the impact on our community by recognizing same-sex partnership? Administration. Well, I will defer to my colleagues to tell you about the record to be made. Now, In terms of future arrangement made by the registry, the scale and operation of the future registry will be very different from that of the marriage registries. The registries will be set up in different places, so we shouldn't be too worried about this. DOJ? Well, let me briefly supplement. Well, the idea of keeping things on record is perhaps about passing certain legal documents to other executive authorities for record-keeping purpose. And the authority receiving the legal documents have the responsibility to have the documents filed. The legal effect of keeping these documents on record is uncertain. And I believe the registration cannot be handled simply by keeping things on record. So this registration system we propose is not simply about automatically recognizing same-sex partnerships formed overseas. Well, 4 members are waiting to speak. I will extend this meeting by about 10 minutes. I'll let the 4 members ask their questions, then we'll wrap up this meeting. We have a meeting scheduled for Monday as well. Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you. I want to follow up on the questions raised by Mr. Kenneth Leung. Say a party of a same-sex partner changes his or her sex. Well, the administration said we have to deal with the matter carefully because there are some JR cases handled by the courts in Hong Kong. There are different ways to handle the matter in different places. Of course, we cannot control how this matter is dealt with in other places. We cannot decide whether the same-sex partnership will still be valid. Well, this bill is about same-sex partnership. If one of the parties has changed his or her sex, then they will no longer be in same-sex partnership. So to avoid doubt, if one of the parties has changed his or her sex, the registration obtained should be revoked or should be void. This should be one of the prerequisites. Why do you not include this as one of the conditions, stating that if this is the case, the partnership will be revoked or will be void? Ms. Wong? As Deputy Secretary said, there are relevant cases being handled by the court now, so we cannot give a very concrete answer here about our principle. Say a same-sex partnership becomes invalid because one of the parties has changed his or her sex. Well, there is such a possibility. If the same-sex partnership is already terminated elsewhere, then we can trigger the procedures of revoking the registration. Yes, Mr. Edmund Wong? If the registration or the same-sex partnership is invalid, then of course we'll have to revoke the relevant registration in Hong Kong. Now, if one of the parties has his or her identity card stating that the sex is different, will they be able to get married in Hong Kong then, because they will no longer be in a same-sex partnership? If a party has changed his or her sex and then the couple can then get married, that would be a very strange situation.
用另一個角度，
Let me try to supplement from a different angle. Our stance to the issue raised by Mr. Wong is that in recent days there is a number of transgender persons involved in a number of litigations or proceedings. There was one case involving a transgendered person. The case has been dealt with by the CFA. Under certain conditions, a person whose gender has been changed can register for marriage under the ordinance. However, in another case, it is in relation to the conditions relating to an ID card. My understanding is that there are a number of cases being dealt with. Some have already gone through the procedure. I fully understand the member's question, but this involves many different complicated issues. Our colleagues from the Bureau have already answered. In short, we have to be prudent. We have to carefully consider issues relating to transgender persons as well as the recent cases. Perhaps members should keep their questions short. Mr. Tang Fei, I have two questions. First, 6E 1B is about the partnership or union. In the blue bill, it says that it is a registered civil union. Does it mean that if a person sets up an organization to assist same-sex partners to sign a contract that is similar to a civil union, but it does not have an official status as a civil union officially, it should be rejected by the Hong Kong registrar if they want to apply for a recognition. Is that right? Under F, it says that there is not between the parties any specified relationship under Schedule 2. Under C 3842, that means if there is an adoptive relationship between the parties, then they will be excluded. It doesn't really matter whether the adoption is done in Hong Kong or not. If the relationship is concealed during the application for registration, is it the case that it is misrepresentation which attracts criminal liabilities? I will ask Ms. Wong to answer the second question. In reply to the first question, an overseas organizations using a contract for a registration. If it is not dealt with under the laws of the overseas jurisdiction, then it will not be recognized by us. Ms. Wong, please be succinct. If there is deliberate concealment of the information, yes, there is criminal liability, because an oath is required during the registration. If there is any misrepresentation under Section 32 of the Criminal Procedure Ordinance, it is an offense. Mr. So Chung-wing. I want to ask about Clause 5. I think the last sentence is superfluous, whether it's on legal or textual perspective. The DOJ said in the reply that it must be there. I think the sentences in front has already achieved your goal by reflecting the legislative intent. What is the reason for keeping it there? It's just a friendly reminder from us. We are very sensitive when it comes to this line, because we don't want this regime to blur the line of marriage. I don't think you should emphasize that it is recognized in law, because there is a tacit understanding. We thank Mr. So for his views. We take note of it. Mr. Eric Yim is the last member to ask questions in this session. One of the conditions for the registration is that the parties have registered their relationship overseas. What about same-sex partners who don't have the means to go overseas to have the relationship registered? Is it some kind of discrimination if they lodge a complaint with the if the EOC, the Equal Opportunities Commission? What will happen? Well, the head of the EOC said that it is beyond their term of reference. But what if there is a complaint that there is discrimination? Will you consider offering subsidy for them to go overseas to have their relationship registered? For a relationship to be registered overseas, as a previous provision has mentioned, it can be either done in person or by remote means. Regarding the question on whether there will be a complaint, we are unable to give any comment at this stage. Sorry, the member is not coming through. It will save money, is that right? We have stressed that this arrangement is based on administrative consideration. We want to better effect the registration regime. The court has already said that we have flexibility. There is no discrimination whatsoever against any parties. When it comes to registration done overseas, we have considered that we don't want any inconvenience caused. That's why we have chosen this way. It is objective. People go overseas very often. There are also registration done online. We don't think that this will cause great difficulties to prospective parties for registration. There's no discrimination. Well, there are 28 questions asked. Can you tell me again what is the deadline for receiving written submissions? July 29th before 5 p.m. It's a Tuesday. There has been 28 rounds of questions and answers. We have finished this meeting. The next meeting, well, let me remind members, if you would like to make amendments, please send your draft to the Secretariat before 5 o'clock on the 28th of July. The administration has been asked to provide reply to these proposed amendments. The next meeting will take place at 9 o'clock on the 28th of July. There will be 2 sessions. If there are no other questions, that's the end of this meeting. Can you say that again? Let me say this again. It's already written anyway. The 3rd meeting will take place on Monday at 9 o'clock on the 28th of July. It will last till 10:30. The 4th meeting will start at 11:45 to 12:15. Let's see if we can finish everything. Thank you.